Welcome back to our latest deep dive. Today we are attempting something that, well, honestly, when I first looked at the stack of research you sent over for this one, I thought it was a mistake.
Yeah, I kind of figured you would. It does look a bit disjointed at first glance.
Disjointed is putting it mildly. I mean, I thought maybe it accidentally stapled two completely different show scripts together.
Just threw the papers in the air and saw what stuck.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Because we are taking two things that usually sit on entirely opposite ends of the library.
Opposite ends of the human experience, really.
Yeah, and we are basically smashing them together at high speed to see what breaks.
That is the goal.
So on one side, we have Hermann Hesse's Demian.
A total classic.
Absolute classic. I mean, if you were an angsty teenager
Right.
or just a teenager who felt vaguely misunderstood by the universe in general, you probably had a dog-eared copy of this shoved in your backpack.
Oh, absolutely.
It's from 1919. It's about this boy named Emile Sinclair, and it's about spiritual awakening. You know, the bird fighting its way out of the egg, the abraxas, all that very mystical, deep, soul-searching stuff.
It's a book about the interior life.
Right.
The soft, squishy, vulnerable parts of the soul. It's usually shelved right under literature or spirituality.
Exactly. And then on the other side of the ring, weighing in at, well, frankly, a massive amount of intellectual heavy lifting, we have Michel Foucault.
The infamous Foucault.
French philosopher who is famous for being basically absolutely terrifying.
He does have that reputation.
I mean, he's the guy who wrote extensively about prisons and madness and surveillance and how society is essentially a giant machine designed to crush you into compliance.
He is definitively not warm and fuzzy.
No, not at all. He's
Yeah.
cold clinical sociology.
And yet, when you really dig into the source material we've pulled for today, specifically this one analysis comparing the two works, these two seemingly opposite thinkers collide in a way that is genuinely startling.
Because they are ultimately asking the exact same question.
Which is, how is a human being made?
Right.
Or perhaps more accurately, according to the Foucault side of things, how is a human being manufactured?
Manufactured. That's a much creepier word. It implies an assembly line.
It does, and that's exactly the link. One author uses the language of the soul.
That's Hesse.
Right, and the other uses the language of the prison, which is Foucault.
Oh.
But they meet at this very specific and honestly very uncomfortable concept of the internalized surveillance system.
Okay, so here is our mission for this deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to explore how the deeply personal struggles of a fictional character from 1919, young Sinclair, actually explain the invisible prisons that we are all living in right now.
We're going to completely ruin your childhood memories of Demian by injecting French philosophy into it.
Always a fun party trick.
Yeah.
But then, because we apparently really like to make things difficult for ourselves, we're going to test that exact philosophy against a very harsh, very modern reality.
Yes, we are.
We're going to look at the real-world protests in Iran regarding the hijab. Based entirely on the reports in our sources, we're going to ask if this philosophy of the self actually holds up when people are physically pointing guns at you.
It's going to be a journey from the quiet bedroom of a child to the very real streets of a revolution.
So buckle up for this one. Let's just unpack this right from the start. Let's start with the architecture.
The architecture of the mind and the architecture of the house.
Right. So let's open up Demiana. We drop right into the life of Emile Sinclair. And immediately, before we even get to the plot, before we meet the bully or the mentor, we get this geography of his soul. He describes these two worlds.
The Zwei Welten, the two worlds concept. It is arguably one of the most famous openings in German literature.
And the first one he introduces is the bright world. Now, when I read this as a kid, I just thought, okay, he has a nice house.
Sure, cozy family home.
Right, it's cozy. But reading it now, with Foucault sitting on the desk next to me, it feels totally different. It feels almost sterile.
It's aggressive in its cleanliness, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
Sinclair describes it as mildness and clarity, punctuality and duty. It smells like cleaning products and morning coffee. It's the Bible resting on the nightstand. It's his parents. It's school. It's straight lines and washed hands.
Punctuality and duty, those aren't moral virtues, strictly speaking.
What do you mean?
Well, they are industrial virtues. They're the virtues of efficiency.
Oh, wow. That's a really good point. And that's exactly where the Foucault alarm bells start ringing. Because Sinclair thinks he's describing home and love. He thinks he's describing safety.
Yes, but Foucault looked at that exact same dining room table, that same ticking clock on the wall, and he wouldn't see a family. He would see an apparatus.
An apparatus.
An educational apparatus, to use his specific term. This is crucial for you as the listener to grasp right away. When Foucault talks about an educational apparatus or a disciplinary institution, he isn't just talking about a literal stone prison with iron bars.
He's talking about any space at all. Homeschool church.
Exactly. Any space that is designed to produce a specific product.
And the product in this case isn't a toaster or a car. The product is a normal child.
Precisely. A normal subject. Or, to use Foucault's rather chilling term, a docile body. Think about the morning routine that Sinclair implies in the book. You wake up at a specific time, you wash your hands, you comb your hair. Why do you wash your hands?
I mean, hygiene. To not get sick, that seems like a pretty reasonable thing to teach a kid.
That's the surface reason. That's the biological reason, sure. But sociologically, according to the sources we're using, you wash your hands to demonstrate that you are clean, to demonstrate that you are not dirty.
Okay.
It is a ritual of alignment with the standard. If you come to the breakfast table with dirty fingernails in the bright world, what actually happens?
You get scolded, you feel shame, everyone stops and looks at your hand.
Exactly. You are instantly marked as abnormal. And this is the Foucaultian trap. The bright world isn't actually safe because it protects you from external danger. It's safe because it is the zone where you are currently complying with the rules.
It is a space of normality.
Yeah.
That completely changes the temperature of the room, doesn't it? It implies that the love Sinclair feels from his parents is conditional. It's deeply conditional on him maintaining that normal status.
And Sinclair, even as a young child, senses it. That's the anxiety constantly humming in the background of Chapter 1. He isn't just afraid of the dark outside the house, he's afraid of slipping.
He's afraid of becoming the other.
He's terrified of being found defective.
It reminds me of that concept of the panopticon we touched on briefly in the intro. But usually when people talk about the panopticon, they mean CCTV cameras or the government reading your emails. They mean Big Brother.
That's the modern tech version of it. But we really need to go back to the source to understand Sinclair. The original panopticon was a prison design conceptualized by Jeremy Bentham in the 18th century.
Right, it was a circular building.
A circular prison with a single watchtower right in the middle. The guard in the tower could see into every single backlit cell, but the prisoners looking out couldn't see into the tower.
Because of blinds or lighting. So they never actually knew if the guard was watching them at any given moment.
Right. The guard could be asleep, the guard could be on a lunch break reading a book, the tower could be completely empty, but the prisoner has to assume the guard is watching.
And so because of that assumption, they behave.
Yeah.
They essentially police themselves.
They behave. But eventually, and this is the absolutely key insight for Sinclair and for us today, the guard doesn't even need to be physically present anymore. You install the guard in your own head.
The internalized surveillance system, the internal watchman.
Exactly. When Sinclair is in his bedroom, totally alone behind a closed door, and he thinks about doing something bad, maybe skipping his homework or thinking an impure thought, he feels an immediate spike of guilt.
Yeah.
Who is generating that guilt? His parents aren't in the room. The teacher isn't standing over him.
It's the software his parents install.
It is the voice of the bright world playing on an endless loop in his own cortex. He is actively policing himself to maintain his status as a normal subject.
Which effectively makes the bright world a high-security mental ward, where the patient is also the doctor and the guard all at once.
A beautiful, flower-scented, well-lit prison. And the true tragedy of it is that Sinclair loves it. He desperately wants to stay there. He wants to be the model student.
Because it's comfortable.
Yeah.
It's easy. You just follow the tracks that have been laid down for you.
Until he can't. Until the raw biology and chaos of being a human being runs headfirst into the rigid sociology of being a good boy.
And that collision perfectly brings us to the whistle. The terrifying whistle of Franz Kromer.
The invasion of abnormality.
So let's talk about Kromer. In the book, he's the local bully. He's everything the bright world absolutely hates. He's dirty, he's rough, he spits on the ground. He represents the dark world.
He is the literal contamination that Sinclair is so terrified of.
And the catalyst for the whole plot, the one single event that kicks Sinclair out of paradise, is actually a lie.
A very childish lie.
Right. Sinclair is hanging out with Kromer and some other rough kids, and he wants to impress them. He wants to look cool and dangerous. So he makes up a story. He says, I stole a sack of apples from the local orchard.
Which is a classic childhood move, trying to gain social capital by pretending to be dangerous when you're really not.
But Kromer, being a natural predator, sees an opening immediately. He says, is that true? Swear to God. Sinclair swears it. And then Kromer says, well, the owner of that orchard offered 2 marks to anyone who finds the thief. I'm going to tell him it was you.
And the trap just snaps shut.
Sinclair is absolutely devastated. He starts stealing real money from his own piggy bank just to pay Cromer off and keep him quiet. He gets physically sick. He can't sleep. But here is the deep dive question, and I really want to push on this. Why is he so terrified?
It's a very good question to ask. I mean, what is the actual worst-case scenario here? His dad finds out, pays the orchard owner for the imaginary apples, and Sinclair gets grounded. It's not exactly a capital crime.
Exactly. But the terror Sinclair describes in the text is existential. It feels like he's dying. Why is the reaction so extreme?
Because it's not about the apples at all. It's about his status as a normal subject. If we look closely at the source material, the argument is that Sinclair isn't just afraid of a mundane punishment. He is afraid of becoming a Foucaultian abnormal.
A Foucaultian abnormal. That sounds like a diagnosis you definitely don't want to see on your medical chart.
Sinclair has touched the dark world. By lying, by interacting with Cromer on that level, he has stepped outside the protective circle of the bright world. He has broken the fundamental rules of the educational apparatus.
So suddenly that normal label simply doesn't apply to him anymore. He's glitching in the system.
Exactly. And because he already has that internal watchman fully installed that we discussed, the result is immediate psychological torture. Cromer is just the trigger.
He's the catalyst.
Right. Cromer is the external force that activates the internal surveillance system that was already there.
I see. So before Cromer showed up, the surveillance system was mostly dormant because Sinclair was inherently good. He was following the rules. Now that he's bad, the system turns all its weapons inward on him.
Yes. Sinclair feels the oppressive gaze of the bright world even when his parents aren't looking at him. He sits at the family dinner table and he feels completely dirty. He feels like a hardened criminal. Not because his parents know his secret, they have no idea what's going on, but because he knows he has violated the definition of normal.
It's the sheer terror of contamination. He feels like he's been infected by the dark world and he's bringing it into the clean house.
And Cromer capitalizes on this internal fracture. He locks Sinclair in a mental prison built entirely of guilt and self-censorship. The profound suffering isn't coming from Cromer physically punching him. It's coming from Sinclair's deep internal belief that he is now fundamentally wrong. He is dirty.
It's amazing how perfectly that maps onto the universal teenage experience. That overwhelming feeling that everyone knows your dark secret, that feeling of if they really knew who I was inside, they wouldn't love me anymore.
That is the ultimate power of social discipline. It isolates you completely. It makes you feel like the problem is your soul, your nature, not the system itself. It keeps you docile because you are simply too busy feeling guilty to ever rebel.
So Sinclair's trapped. He's drowning in this guilt. He's stealing money. He's utterly miserable. And then just when he can't take it anymore, the savior arrives. The mysterious, incredibly charismatic Max Demian.
Demian, the character who basically ruins the grading curve for everyone else.
Right. He's cool. He's older. He just seems to inherently know everything. He's got that heavy old soul vibe going on. But in our analytical context today, he's not just a cool older friend. He is the active antidote to the panopticon.
He truly is. If Foucault's analysis of the problem is that society aggressively turns us into docile bodies, people who follow rules automatically without thinking, then Demian represents the countermove, the way out.
In the novel, Hesse calls this process individuation, becoming your true, authentic self.
And Foucault, looking at the exact same process, might call it the creation of a subject. A human being who actively determines their own actions and morals rather than being passively determined by the apparatus.
But how does Demian actually do it? Because he doesn't just walk up and punch Cromer in the face to solve the problem. I mean, he does deal with Cromer off-screen eventually. But the real heavy lifting, the real work he does, is on Sinclair's mind.
He performs a kind of radical cognitive surgery on him. He teaches Sinclair to relentlessly question classification and definition. This is the master key to breaking out of the prison.
Let's give the listener the specific example, the really big one from the early chapters of the book.
The story of Cain and Abel.
Right. So in Sunday school, firmly inside the bright world, Sinclair learns the standard orthodox version of the story. Cain killed his brother Abel. God got mad. God put a physical mark on Cain so everyone everywhere would know forever that he was a murderer. Cain is the ultimate bad guy. End of story.
That is the official authorized definition, the normal view. It perfectly reinforces the binary that the apparatus needs. Good versus bad, obedient versus disobedient.
But Demian is walking home from school with Sinclair one day, and he casually says, wait a minute.
He says, what if that entire premise is wrong? What if the mark of Cain wasn't a mark of shame at all? What if Cain was just powerful and bold and inherently dangerous to the status quo, so the weak, cowardly people made up a spooky story to vilify him?
He completely flips the script. He takes the ultimate symbol of bad and turns it into a symbol of distinction and power. He suggests that maybe Cain wasn't evil at all. Maybe he was just too much for ordinary, fragile people to handle.
Think about what that specific conversation does to Sinclair's structured mind. It's like a cognitive bomb going off. Demian is teaching Sinclair that the definitions handed down to him by the school and the church are not absolute laws of physics.
They are gravity.
Right. They are just stories. They are narratives deliberately written by people in power to keep other people in line.
It's like finding a loose brick in the seemingly impenetrable wall of the prison. If the story about Cain is a lie, or at least widely open to interpretation, then maybe the story about Sinclair being a totally bad boy because he lied is a lie too.
Exactly. It creates mental space. It allows Sinclair to take a step back and look at the bright world not as the entire universe, but as just one single option, one specific arbitrary set of rules that he now realizes he can choose to accept or reject.
And this realization leads us directly to the most famous metaphor in the entire book, the egg. I literally have this quote tattooed on my brain from high school.
Read it out for us. Let's hear the exact phrasing.
The bird fights its way out of the egg. The egg is the world. Who would be born must first destroy a world.
It's incredibly metal when you really think about it. Destroy a world.
It is. But let's translate that into our Foucaultian terms for this deep dive. What exactly is the egg?
The egg is the prison of social discipline. It is the hardened shell of societal norms, the bright world, the heavy expectations of your parents, the rigid rules of the school. It is everything that surrounds you from birth and forcefully gives you your shape.
It protects you initially, but it also fundamentally traps you.
Exactly. As a developing chick, you absolutely need the shell to survive. But if you stay in the shell too long past your time, you die. You suffocate in there. To truly live, you have to physically break it.
And breaking the shell is a violent process.
Yes.
Destroying a world.
Yes, it requires force. You have to destroy the internal panopticon. You have to aggressively smash the idea of normal that has been carefully implanted in your brain since childhood. You have to be fully willing to be called abnormal or crazy or bad by society in order to finally breathe your own air.
So Sinclair's growth throughout the novel, and really the growth of anyone transitioning into true adulthood, is the ongoing process of destroying that internal watchman and drawing an entirely new map for your own soul.
That is the synthesis of our two sources here. Hesse gives us the lush, emotional journey of that internal destruction, and Foucault gives us the cold, clinical blueprints of the prison we are actively destroying.
Okay, so far this is deeply inspiring. We have identified the problem, which is that society controls us via guilt and arbitrary norms. We have the solution, which is to break the mental chains, question the definitions, and become yourself. It's a great empowering message.
It sounds totally perfect on paper.
It really does.
Yeah.
But here is where we have to drastically stop the car. Because our source material takes a very sharp, very serious turn right here. We are about to leave the comfortable theoretical world of literary analysis, and we are going to hit a brick wall of reality.
Yes. This is where we are required to rigorously test the philosophy. Because it's incredibly easy to talk poetically about breaking the egg when the actual consequences are your dad gets mad at you, you get a bad grade in school.
Exactly. You get grounded. But what happens when breaking the egg means you might literally get shot?
This brings us to the core critique found in our sources. And we need to take a breath here because we are about to make a contextual jump that, honestly, when I first looked at the outline, I thought, are we allowed to do this? Is this a fair comparison?
It is a profoundly jarring shift. We are moving from a fictional 1919 novel about a sad German boy's feelings to the very real, very violent streets of modern Iran.
Specifically, we are looking at the protests surrounding the hijab as detailed in the reports provided in our sources, the woman life freedom movement. We have specific source material here detailing arrests, beatings, and lethal violence, real blood on the streets.
And we are attempting to look at this stark reality through the lens of Foucault's concept.
Yeah.
Concept he called the aesthetics of existence.
Right, and this is exactly where the intellectual friction happens. Towards the end of his life, Foucault shifted slightly and asked a very simple, poignant question. He asked, why can't every person's life be a work of art?
He essentially said, why is a lamp or a house considered an art object, but not our own life?
It's a beautiful thought initially. It suggests that we should deliberately craft our identities with the exact same care and creativity and intentionality that a master artist crafts a sculpture. We shouldn't just passively accept to the identity handed to us by the state. We should actively sculpt ourselves.
And here is the massive pushback from the critique in the source. If I'm an Iranian woman standing in the street in front of the authorities, and they have batons and weapons, and I'm holding a headscarf I just took off, telling me to make my life a work of art it sounds like an insult.
It sounds like a massive luxury belief.
Exactly. This sounds like a language game. It sounds like something you say in a comfortable Paris cafe while sipping an espresso. It completely lacks, what was the exact phrase the critique used? Methodological concreteness.
Methodological concreteness,
Yeah.
meaning it severely lacks the how. It gives you this beautiful, lofty goal to sculpt your soul, but it offers absolutely zero physical protection against a descending baton.
So let's play devil's advocate here and dig into the defense provided in the text. Is this comparison just fundamentally broken? Is Foucault just totally useless when the violence stops being soft, like in a school setting, and starts being hard, like in an authoritarian theocracy?
It is the ultimate stress test of his philosophy. If it can't survive the street test, it's just pretty literature. But I want to push back hard on the idea that art in this specific Foucaultian context means mere decoration.
Okay, convince me. Walk me through it, because right now art feels incredibly trivial compared to actual survival.
When Foucault says art here, he absolutely doesn't mean pretty. He doesn't mean aesthetic in the modern, superficial Instagram sense of the word. He's referring to poiesis, pure creation. But think about the physical act of sculpture. Real hard sculpture. You are taking a raw, dense material like stone or clay, and you are violently forcing your own will upon it. You are categorically refusing to let it remain a shapeless lump or whatever shape it naturally took.
It involves physical force. It involves cutting and chiseling and stripping away.
Exactly. Now apply that intense process to the human body. In a total institution, like a rigid theocratic state, the state actively claims absolute ownership of your body. The state dictates the shape. It says a woman is covered, a woman is modest, a woman is obedient. That is the exact shape of the stone they are handing you.
They're essentially handing you a pre-carved statue and say, this is you, get in it and don't move.
Exactly. Inhabit this pre-approved form. Now, when a woman physically takes off the hijab in that specific, highly charged context, according to this framework, she isn't just breaking a local dress code. She is taking a sledgehammer to the statue the state handed her.
She's destroying the form.
She's destroying the imposed form to dramatically reveal the form that she alone chose. That is the true aesthetics of existence. It is the radical, dangerous act of saying, my body is not public property. My body is not a blank text for your religious laws to be written on. My body is mine to design and govern.
So the art in this scenario isn't the physical hair flowing in the wind. The art is the profound act of defiance required to show the hair in the first place.
The art is the struggle.
Yeah.
It is the constant friction against power. It is the absolute refusal to accept the definitions of the oppressor. It's an ongoing practice of self-governance.
Wow, that actually links it right back to Sinclair, doesn't it? The bird fights its way out of the egg.
Yes. The egg is the construct of the normal. For Sinclair, the egg was mostly psychological guilt and parental disappointment. For the women in Iran reporting in these sources, the egg is heavily reinforced with morality, police violence, and prison sentences. The shell is infinitely harder. The shell is deadly.
But the core act of breaking it, the fundamental human drive to reject that shell, is the exact same underlying psychological mechanism.
It is the internal refusal to be defined by an external power. Foucault was very realistic. He realized that you cannot always defeat power physically in the moment. Sometimes the tank simply wins. Sometimes the prison door locks and you are inside.
That's incredibly bleak.
It is stark reality. Foucault didn't believe in a utopia where power magically disappears. Power is like the air we breathe. It is everywhere at all times. But Foucault argues there is a crucial internal space that power cannot reach, but only if you actively fight for it, that can lock up your physical body. But if you have rigorously practiced this aesthetics of existence, if you have solidified your own internal definition of yourself, they cannot make you actually believe you are a criminal.
They can kill the artist, but they can't force the artist to paint what they want them to paint.
Exactly. And that distinction, the vast gulf between being a criminal, which is what the state says you are, and being a revolutionary, which is what you know internally you are, that is the entire game. That is the difference between your spirit being crushed and becoming a martyr who inspires others.
So Foucault doesn't give them a physical shield against the bullets. He gives them a psychological mirror, a way to see themselves as autonomous and powerful even when they are physically powerless.
And Historically speaking, that profound internal shift, that complete refusal to accept the state's definition of reality, is the necessary spark that eventually burns the whole oppressive system to the ground. You simply cannot have a successful political revolution until you have had a widespread psychological revolution first.
You literally have to imagine yourself as a free person before you can effectively fight for freedom in the streets.
Exactly. Sinclair had to stop believing he was inherently dirty before he could finally stand up for his own soul. A population has to stop believing the regime's definition of normal before they can collectively take to the streets.
So the philosophy is the initial spark. The politics and the action is the fire that follows.
That's a really excellent way to synthesize it.
But we still have to acknowledge the hard limitations here.
Yeah.
And I think this is vitally important for you as the listener so we don't sound like we're just safely romanticizing terrible suffering from afar.
Agreed. We must absolutely validate the critique presented in the source material. It is a valid concern.
The source material explicitly points out that Foucault's theories severely lack methodological concreteness, which, as we said earlier, is just a fancy academic way of saying he doesn't actually tell you what to do when the riot police show up.
Right. Make your life art is a philosophical goal. It is not a tactical strategy. It doesn't tell you how to organize a safe protest, how to securely encrypt your digital communications, or how to physically defend yourself against an armed attack.
It's the difference between reading a manifesto and reading a survival manual. Foucault wrote a brilliant manifesto on power. He decidedly did not write the survival manual.
And that's exactly where the intense frustration comes in for critics. If you are actively looking for a step-by-step manual on overthrowing a heavily armed government, Foucault is not going to be your guy. He studied Western democracies with sophisticated soft controls like clinic schools and psychiatric wards. He struggles a bit more with raw hard power. But if you are looking for a manual on how to keep your internal soul intact while living under a government you despise, that's where Foucault shines.
It's the clear distinction between practical strategy and internal spirit.
Yes. In the face of actual live ammunition, philosophical resistance can absolutely feel like a useless luxury, and we have to deeply respect that reality. Sometimes in those extreme moments, you don't need a French philosopher. You need strong political solidarity. You need coordinated international pressure. You need
Yep.
force to meet force.
Our source material actually asks a really provocative question right at the end regarding this exact tension. It asks whether we should always prioritize political solidarity and physical force over this kind of philosophy in these life or death situations.
It's the eternal human tension, the pen versus the sword, or rather the internal idea versus the external action.
But maybe they aren't enemies in this context. Maybe they're necessary teammates.
I strongly think they are. I think the philosophical resistance, that stubborn internal refusal to be defined by the oppressor, is the essential fuel for the action. Think about it. Why would you organize? Why would you willingly face the force of the state? You only do that if you have already definitively won the philosophical battle inside your own head. You only take that immense physical risk if you have already shattered the internal watchman.
The philosophy provides the why, the politics provides the how.
Exactly. You need both to survive and ultimately win.
Well, we have definitely covered a massive amount of ground today. We started out in a very clean, very quiet German house in the early 20th century.
We took a long walk through the architecture of the Panopticon.
We faced down the local bully Cromer. We met the incredibly cool Max Demian. And we ended up navigating the incredibly complex and dangerous straits of modern Iran based on the reports in our sources.
It's a very heavy trajectory to trace, but I think it powerfully shows the universal nature of this human struggle. Whether it's a small childhood guilt about a fake sack of stolen apples or a massive life-or-death struggle for fundamental human rights, the underlying mechanism of control is shockingly similar.
Demian shows us the emotional truth of how to break the internal shell of social norms.
While Foucault clinically warns us that the shell isn't just a metaphor, it is a complex, sticky, highly aggressive system of actual power.
And the stark reality of the protests in Iran shows us the incredibly high real-world cost of breaking that shell when the power structure inevitably fights back with everything it has.
It's a very sobering realization. The bright world isn't just annoying or stifling. It can be actively deadly if you attempt to leave its borders.
So here's the final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. We want you to actively look for your own internal watchman this week.
We obviously aren't all living under harsh theocratic regimes, and we aren't all being actively blackmailed by playground bullies. But every single one of us has that internal voice.
That quiet voice that polices you. The one that says, don't wear that outfit. People will stare at you. Don't say that opinion out loud. It's too weird. Don't pursue that specific career. It's not practical enough. Don't laugh too loud.
Ask yourself very seriously, is that actually your voice? Or is that the educational apparatus speaking through you? Is that just the guard sitting comfortably in the tower of your own mind?
Are you constantly policing yourself just to stay safely inside the bright world?
And if you realize that you are, what would it actually look like for you to break the egg?
Maybe don't start a massive street revolution today. Or I don't know your schedule, but just maybe start to question the strict definition of normal that you're currently living by. Who wrote that definition for you? And why do they want you to believe it so badly?
Treating your life as a true work of art starts with simply asking that one question.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. This was a heavy one, but a good one. We'll see you next time.
Stay curious.